my 25th birthday, I bought an Aston Martin Vanquish and a McLaren. Money, I had just got like $5 million something, and then another $10 million.
Hollywood once thought T.I. was just a rapper who knew how to talk about law, money, and power. But by 2025, that idea was crushed. The massive Riverfront real estate holdings in Atlanta forced people to ask again, is T.I. still an artist? Or has he transformed into a power broker built on land? 134 houses bought just to sit empty. The named owner of multiple mansion compounds worth millions of dollars. Even a collection of supercars kept purely for display. Can you believe it? It stands in complete contrast to the image of a child abandoned in the heart of Atlanta. A man once arrested, once dragged into court over disturbing allegations. Even a name once directly called out by the FBI for tax evasion. Just how massive is T.I.'s fortune? Why did young Jeezy say T.I.'s wealth is enough to live comfortably for 3 decades? Why does someone once seen as a criminal now sit comfortably among the elite? Don't look away. What T.I. holds today will make you question your own eyes. T.I., the child abandoned early in life. T.I. was not born into a wealthy elite family. His real name is Clifford Joseph Harris Jr., born on February 25, 1980 in Atlanta, Georgia. But that name did not grow up wrapped in protection. It grew up in Bankhead, a West Side neighborhood, where violence and drugs were not evening news headlines, but the daily backdrop of life. T.I.'s childhood began in poverty, with almost no room left for innocence. His parents divorced very early. His father lived far away in New York, a faint shadow in memory, and later died from Alzheimer's when T.I. was still young. His mother was the sole provider, but had to work constantly to survive, often absent from home. As a result, much of T.I.'s childhood passed under his grandparents' roof. There was shelter, but little real supervision. There were adults around, but not enough time to keep a child from the roads already opening outside. In Bankhead, the streets always whispered. They promised fast money, instant recognition, and the feeling that you were no longer invisible. For T.I., those whispers came early. As a teenager, he began selling drugs. He once wrapped rubber bands around his arm, stretching them tight to show off small rolls of cash, something that world called assets. It sounded childish, but it revealed a cold truth. That was how a child proved his worth in an environment that did not measure value by grades or future plans. At 14, when many kids were still worrying about school tests, T.I. had already been in jail several times. The system learned his name before the music industry did. Those repeated trips in and out of detention did not immediately turn him worse. They taught him something else. In Bankhead, freedom is fragile. Without a foundation, everything can be taken from you in an instant. But from that darkness, a fire was lit. After getting out, T.I. committed himself to rap. At that time, Atlanta was becoming the cradle of a new sound trap. T.I., alongside Jeezy and Gucci Mane, became some of the earliest architects laying the foundation for the Southern trap and hip-hop empire. The king of Southern hip-hop. In 2001, T.I. released his first musical project, I'm Serious. There were no lines of fans waiting to buy records, no charts shaking, no numbers that made the industry flinch. To many, it was just another forgettable debut album passing by like hundreds of other names that had tried their luck in hip-hop. But he had no intention of stepping back. At the time, Atlanta hip-hop was still viewed as a low ground compared to New York or Los Angeles. To be recognized, Southern rappers had to shout louder rap, harder, and survive longer. 2 years later, trap music arrived. The album told stories of drugs, money violence, and the darker corners of life in the American South for the first time, presented directly with structure, and strong enough to travel beyond the neighborhood. Rubber Band Man and 24s were not just hits. Then came Urban Legend in 2004, King in 2006, T.I. vs. T.I.P. released in 2007. Each project was another step upward, not only in sales, but in power. T.I. gradually became the center of Southern rap, the one shaping the sound, the one setting trends, the one other rappers were forced to measure themselves against whether they liked it or not. The title King of the South emerged in that context, a title both glorious and dangerous. Because in hip-hop, crowning yourself, king means placing a target on your own forehead. And T.I. knew that. He accepted it. But the moment the crown was placed, challenges erupted from everywhere. Beefs, rap battles, open and quiet confrontations. The South wanted to test him. The North wanted to pull him down. From then on, T.I.'s life stayed tight as a drawn wire. Still, he held his position. T.I. steps into Hollywood. He came from Atlanta, which in the early 2000s was becoming a new center of American hip-hop alongside New York and Los Angeles. At that time, a new generation of rappers began getting film roles, not as background figures, but to bring street authenticity to the screen. And T.I. fit perfectly. With successful roles in ATL American Gangster and Takers, he secured a growing place in the film industry. He then made a bold move launching the reality show of T.I. and Tiny. Designed to tell the family story of T.I. and Tiny Harris, in a grounded, easy-to-watch family-friendly way, it became one of VH1's most successful family shows. American audiences, especially black viewers, were tired of rappers being tied only to violence and prison. This show offered a different image, a rapper as a father living among children, relatives, and everyday problems. Media coverage at first was fairly positive, but soon, the show faced criticism for representing a family model seen as outdated and no longer fitting modern society. Still, the money earned from the show remained highly desirable. While exact figures were never disclosed by VH1 standards from 2011 to 2016, an A-list star could earn hundreds of thousands to over $1 million per season, not including back-end. After decades of contributing to the stage, have you ever wondered how much money T.I. has actually made? The list of million-dollar real estate Atlanta mansion valued at nearly $3 million. At the end of 2020, T.I. and his wife Tiny completed the purchase of a large mansion in an upscale residential area of Atlanta. According to property records and reports confirmed by local media, the home spans roughly 10,000 square feet, placing it among the rare, large-scale residential properties in that area. This was not a house bought for quick resale, but a property designed for long-term self-contained living. The mansion includes 7 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms, clearly reflecting the goal of creating a living space large enough for family relatives and guests, while still maintaining separation. Inside are a private theater, personal gym spa area, and swimming pool. These amenities allow the owner to meet daily living entertainment and health needs without leaving the grounds. In addition to the main residence, a separate guest house was built, a detail usually found only in high-end properties, ensuring absolute privacy between host and guests. According to Atlanta real estate brokers, the transaction value at the time was close to $3 million. This figure aligns with the property's size, land location, and integrated amenities. It is not a rumor-based estimate, but a number cited by local media based on actual sales data. Among the confirmed assets reported by the media, this stands as the largest private residence ever publicly disclosed under T.I.'s name. It reflects a financial peak period, when cash flow from music, reality television, and other business activities remained strong enough to sustain assets with high operating costs. The Atlanta mansion, therefore, is not just a home, but a marker of the true scale of wealth T.I. built before his career entered a period of turbulence. Real estate in the upscale Bankhead area. Unlike the familiar image of a rapper owning mansions to display status, the Bankhead property reveals a very different perspective on how T.I. views money and power. This was not a place to escape his past, but a place to return and confront it. Bankhead is the area where T.I. grew up, once tied to poverty, violence, and harsh survival years. And it was here that he chose to place one of the largest and most meaningful investments of his life. In 2019, T.I. purchased an old shopping center near Bankhead Highway in Atlanta. Instead of demolishing it to build a flashy commercial project, the site was redeveloped into Entrada West Side, a housing project consisting of 143 apartments under an affordable housing model. This was not the type of real estate that delivers fast profits or luxury branding, but a choice requiring long-term vision and acceptance of lower margins. The project falls under the Buy Back the Block initiative founded by T.I. himself, aiming to keep local residents in the neighborhood, rather than pushing them out through urban development and rising housing costs. Here, real estate is not just an asset, but a tool for social intervention. While individual unit prices were never publicly disclosed, Entrada Westside is still regarded as the largest and most meaningful real estate project in T.I.'s investment portfolio. It reflects a clear choice investing in the community that raised him instead of building isolated fortresses behind iron gates. A notorious supercar collector. If other people's garages are places to park cars, then T.I.'s garage is a life statement. The first shocker is the Bentley Continental GT or GTC. This is not a car bought just for fun. Bentley is a true grand tourer built for people who want speed and absolute silence at the same time. Worth over $200,000. But the point is not the number. T.I.'s Bentley sends a message that he does not need to shout to prove his status. Just close the door and the outside world automatically goes quiet. In an industry where many rappers choose loud display, the Bentley reflects a calm, controlled T.I., deeply aware of soft power. But if Bentley represents refinement, the Rolls-Royce Ghost is a direct punch to the viewer's senses. The Ghost is not just a car, it is a symbol of ownership class, valued at up to $350,000. Yet what makes it intimidating is the feeling it creates. When T.I. sits inside a Ghost, he is no longer a performing artist. He is a decision maker. No need to speak loudly, no need to prove anything. The Ghost creates an invisible distance between its owner and the rest of the world. This is the car that makes many people realize T.I. is not just rich. He operates on a different level. Then the garage shifts into a more practical tone with the Range Rover Autobiography. Valued at around $100,000, it sounds more approachable. But this choice is what truly invites reflection. The Autobiography is an SUV for people who need both luxury and flexibility. It is not for show-off, it is for real life. This shows that T.I. does not build an image just for Instagram photos. He needs a vehicle that can appear every day while still carrying the presence of someone at the top of the food chain. Next comes the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT8, an unexpected turn. No more British elegance, no more classic luxury. The SRT8 is American muscle, powerful, aggressive, and unapologetic. Its value is far lower than a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce. Yet this car speaks most clearly about T.I.'s roots. A rapper raised by the streets, still carrying a need for speed strength and controlled aggression. This is not a car to be chauffeured in. This is a car to drive. And the biggest shock is saved for last, the Ferrari 599 GTB Fiorano. $300,000. For a high-performance Ferrari Grand Tourer V12 engine refined design with lethal intent. Not every rapper steps into Ferrari territory. This is a playground for people who understand cars, not just buy them. The 599 GTB shows that T.I. does not merely collect symbols. He collects driving experience, mechanical power, and the sensation of touching the limit. Taken as a whole, this collection is not a list of cars. It is a psychological portrait. Luxurious, but not weak. Practical, but not ordinary. Muscular, but not crude. And when placed against the backdrop of T.I.'s career, the question is no longer how much money he has. It is this: how much of his real self was hidden inside these cars before every scandal forced it into the light. The biggest scandal, a stain that never washed away. However, despite the wealthy and luxurious life many people envy, T.I. could not escape major scandals and controversies. In January 2021, directly on social media, Sabrina Peterson, a former acquaintance within his personal circle, posted a series of allegations and opened a door T.I. likely never wanted to revisit. Those words quickly moved beyond a personal dispute. They became a catalyst for a wave of other accounts centered on serious allegations involving coercion, manipulation, being drugged or slipped substances, and sexual humiliation allegedly linked to T.I. and Tiny. T.I. responded publicly, denying all allegations and stating that all his relationships were consensual. But from that moment on, the story was no longer fully in his control. The chain reaction unfolded rapidly. A New York attorney announced he had been contacted by more than 30 women survivors or witnesses. These accounts, as described by the media, formed what was called a pattern of allegations spanning many years and multiple states. The stories included claims of being drugged, losing control, being isolated, threatened, or psychologically pressured afterward. It is crucial to emphasize that these were allegations reported by accusers, not conclusions reached by any court. Yet in the media space, the line between accusation and verdict is often extremely thin. In later investigations and summaries, the term drugging appeared repeatedly. The common narrative described meetings or parties' drinks being offered, followed by dizziness, loss of control, or unconsciousness. Some individuals stated that upon regaining awareness, they no longer had the capacity to consent and believed they had been assaulted. Other accounts mentioned pressure to remain silent afterward. These details, though unproven in court, were enough to paint a picture that deeply unsettled the public. On the criminal side, there was one confirmed milestone. In May 2021, media reported that the Los Angeles Police Department was reviewing a complaint related to an incident from 2005. However, by September of the same year, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced it would not file charges because the statute of limitations had expired under the law applicable at the time. This detail is easily misunderstood. A decision not to prosecute due to expired limitations is not a ruling on the truth or falsity of the allegations. It simply reflects the legal time limits of the justice system. The civil front lasted longer. In early 2024, an anonymous plaintiff filed a civil lawsuit related to the 2005 allegation. By August 2024, the court accepted a motion to dismiss from T.I. and Tiny for reasons described in news reports as related to procedural issues and legal requirements. Once again, the case ended without a judgment on the substance of the claims. But real consequences did not wait for verdicts. The reality television show of T.I. and Tiny on VH1 was suspended. Partners grew cautious. In the media, his name remained tied to heavy keywords for years afterward. No handcuffs, no prison sentence. Yet something still collapsed. That was public image. And sometimes in the world of celebrity, the public's verdict arrives faster than any court decision. Virginity check. When a father's power crosses moral boundaries. In 2019, T.I. was not arrested, not investigated, and did not face any legal charges. Yet with a single public statement, he triggered one of the biggest social shocks of his career. During an appearance on the Ladies Like Us podcast, T.I. said he regularly took his biological daughter for medical checkups to ensure her private status. The way he spoke about it was calm, as if this were a natural part of fatherhood. That calmness was precisely what ignited public outrage. Within a short time, T.I.'s remarks spread across social media and sparked fierce reactions from professionals, social organizations, and the American public. Doctors stated that no medical standard exists that allows a person's private life to be evaluated through such procedures. Psychologists warned that excessive surveillance of a child's private life, especially after adulthood, can cause long-term psychological harm. Many women's rights organizations described it as a violation of personal boundaries carried out in the name of family protection. This scandal was not controversial because of legal issues, but because it exposed how power operates within the family space. In T.I.'s story, his daughter did not appear as an individual with autonomy, but as an extension of honor that needed monitoring. This was the moment when the model father image he had built over years began to crack. The public no longer saw him as a guardian of traditional values, but began questioning the line between responsibility and control. T.I. later issued an apology, saying he had expressed himself poorly, and emphasizing that his intentions were to protect his daughter. However, that explanation could not undo the impact, because the problem was not wording, but the mindset behind the statement. From that point on, every comment T.I. made about family morality and masculinity was received with caution. He was no longer viewed as someone transmitting values, but as someone trying to preserve personal authority. The most dangerous aspect of the 2019 scandal was that it did not end when media attention faded. It left a layer of lingering doubt in public consciousness. When the wave of serious allegations erupted in 2021, the public did not approach the story from a neutral position. They carried the memory of the earlier scandal, along with unresolved questions about power boundaries and respect for personal autonomy. Legally, the two events were not directly connected. But in terms of image, they were linked by an invisible thread trust had already eroded. The 2019 scandal became a psychological foundation that made the public more willing to believe boundaries may have been crossed in other spaces. Thus, the virginity check was not an immediate knockout blow, but a foundational crack. It did not collapse T.I. instantly, but it weakened every defense that followed. And from that moment on, the central question was no longer right or wrong in each individual story, but this when power is exercised in the name of family and love. Who gets to draw the final line? The fall of a legend. The collapse of T.I. did not come with a sentence. It came with silence. And the first blow came from what once seemed the safest place, television. For an artist past his mainstream peak like T.I., reality television is not just entertainment, it is a survival engine. It is where an image gets refreshed every week, where family is presented as a soft layer covering a street past, where production money, advertising money, booking fees, and brand deals all flow into a single stream. And then that engine shut down. In February 2021, when the wave of allegations erupted, the show Friends and Family Hustle was suspended from filming. Not edited, not delayed, stopped. Television does not need a legal conclusion to pull the plug. It only needs reputational risk to cross a certain threshold. For T.I., that was the moment he lost the thing that kept him inside the audience's living room. A year later, when he publicly expressed frustration that the show had not returned, the message was already clear. This was no longer a pause. This was a silent ending. And the most painful part was not the money, it was the timing. When a scandal needs a platform to retell the story in a controlled way, that platform was already gone. More ironically, the criminal path, which could have delivered a clear full stop, never materialized. When prosecutors said they could not pursue the old case due to the statute of limitations, the legal process stopped, but public opinion did not. There was no trial, no ruling on the substance, no final answer for society to close the file. The story fell into a gray zone where debate drags on without a shared conclusion. Then in 2024, when a civil lawsuit appeared and was later dismissed, the media had another cycle to report. Not because there were new details, but because the story had never been closed. For a public figure, this is the most dangerous position. Not convicted, but never fully cleared either. Financially, the truth is there is no public damage report. There is no official number stating how many millions of dollars the scandal cost T.I. Net worth estimates remain vague, and are not solid enough to serve as proof. Tax issues have been mentioned, but there is no evidence showing they stem directly from the scandal. And there were also later legal wins that run counter to the idea of total loss. So what did T.I. really lose? He lost television leverage. He lost the platform that could stabilize his image at the moment he needed it most. He lost the ability to tell his own story on his own timing. The career did not die. The assets did not collapse. But the public armor cracked, and the question left hanging: is this when the lights go out before the truth is ever fully defined? What does a legend have left to stand back up? Does T.I. still hold a place in society? By 2025, when people mention T.I., the question is no longer simply whether he still releases music. The real question runs deeper, more uncomfortable, and far fewer are willing to ask it directly. Is T.I. living off rap, or was rap simply the tool that helped him build a far more durable empire? The phrase "music can fade, land does not" is not a casual line. It is the most concise summary of this entire evolution. Looking back at the starting point, T.I. entered music not from a safe environment. His childhood was defined by instability, by the sense that everything could disappear at any moment. Because of that, rap was never just pure art to him. It was a survival tool, the fastest way out of the social limits he was born into. When success arrived, T.I. gained more than money. He gained cultural power, a voice, a position in Southern hip-hop. But more importantly, he gained a sense of control he had never known before. At his peak, T.I. was seen as one of the most intelligent rappers of his generation. He spoke about law, business, and personal responsibility. His image was not just that of an artist, but of a man with principles and a clear life structure. But it was precisely then that the paradox began to form. When someone believes too deeply in their own control, they often underestimate what can shatter that structure. The scandals did not arrive as a single explosion, but as a chain of prolonged tremors. Past legal troubles had already taught T.I. one hard lesson: freedom can be taken away. Later moral controversies and family image issues taught him something even more frightening. Once public trust is lost, it is extremely difficult to recover. T.I. was not erased from the industry, but he was pushed into a gray zone where every statement and every move is filtered through suspicion. It was in this phase that T.I.'s direction began to shift clearly. He did not fully retreat from music, but music was no longer the sole center of the game. Instead, he leaned heavily into real estate physical assets, things that do not depend on public emotion or trend cycles. Mansions stopped being mere symbols of luxury. They became financial anchors. Museums were not just places to display memories. They became a way for T.I. to control his own narrative to frame his legacy, the way he wants it remembered. What matters is that T.I. is not the first rapper to invest in real estate, but he is among the few who understand that real estate is not just an investment, but an escape strategy. In an industry where a reputation can be destroyed by a single tweet or an unproven allegation, land and fixed assets provide a form of security music can never guarantee. This is not a betrayal of hip-hop. It is the survival reflex of someone who has lost enough to understand the rules of the game. In 2025, T.I. still appears, still speaks, still holds a certain level of influence. But his role has changed. He no longer needs to prove he is the #1 rapper. He does not need charts or awards to validate himself. What he needs to protect now is his asset base, his social standing, and long-term control. Rap becomes one element of a personal brand, no longer the single pillar holding up the entire system. This shift creates the final paradox in T.I.'s story. Audiences may be deeply divided about who he is. Some still respect his talent, intelligence, and historical role in Southern rap. Others cannot overlook the scandals and see them as signs of overreach and control. But regardless of where one stands, it is hard to deny one thing: financially and strategically, T.I. moved ahead of many of his peers. This forces a re-evaluation of hip-hop and success itself. Perhaps rap for some people was never meant to be the final destination. Perhaps it was only a vehicle into other more durable spaces of power. For T.I., music opened the door. But land is what keeps that door from ever closing. When people look at T.I. in 2025, they no longer see a rapper chasing relevance. They see a man who has lived long enough in the industry to understand that survival requires changing shape, knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to step away from the spotlight to preserve real weight. And so the closing question is no longer simply whether T.I. still raps. The more accurate and more uncomfortable question is this: in 2025, is T.I. a rapper rich in real estate, or a real estate power player who once used rap to rise? How that question is answered will shape not only how the public sees him, but how hip-hop history.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.